All right, we are down to the review and approval of a site plan at 224 North 2nd Street. PIN number is 10-10-280-001 and -002. In your packets, you should have a map outlining the site plan for you. At this time, I'd ask our first, let's go ahead and open it up to our engineer. He has reviewed the site plan that was proposed. In your packets, you should have a copy of his comments on the site plan. It's the one with the Farnsworth Group on the top. So you can review that, and he can give us his thoughts on the site plan. Brandon, go ahead.
Thank you, Fred. I received the site plan that I believe you all have on Friday. It had been revised from an earlier version. There are not full-blown construction plans to review where there might be additional information. So the comments that I've provided are on the information that I was provided. There might be more in the future, and we can get into some of that. So as I read through the ordinance, looking at what our purpose is here to review the site plan with respect to the zoning ordinance, some of the things it talks about are layout, side yards, heights, setbacks, these sorts of things. And as I mentioned in my, I'll just kind of go down the points here, and we can dive deeper if we need to on them. But the plan that I was provided does, in B1 zoning, there are no front and side yards, only a rear yard, and this meets that requirement. It also meets the height requirement. While a 40-foot tower is certainly going to be noticeable, the limit is 54 feet. So for what little regulations are included in your zoning ordinance for B1 zoning, this does meet that. So, and the parking as well, they're required to provide one per 100, and they've got one per 94. So really the few things that we can look at, this seems to meet those specific requirements of that ordinance. However, the biggest thing is the IDOT permit. They're going to need to coordinate with IDOT, this being a frontage on IDOT with drainage most likely heading north to the IDOT right away. That's going to be a big hurdle to tackle. Having been in that position many times, I can understand there's probably some work to do there. So the details of how they do that would be ordinarily something we would look at as well. You can see on the site plan, they call out for the detention being in the northwest corner. That'll be have a volume and pump piping that enables them to receive IDOT permit and meet their regulations, but those details were not provided. So that second bullet point, talking a little bit about the grading, how the site drains to that detention basin, presumably how that detention basin functions, its size and function, and then the utility connections. Those are things that I would look forward to seeing, or might recommend you have conditional approval upon receipt of that additional information or that IDOT permit. That's a question for you to consider. And the other biggest thing, I think, question that I had here is if you'll look on the east side of the proposed development along First Street, there are private improvements proposed in public right-of-way. Ordinarily, that would be something that we would not recommend. It certainly can be done, but I don't know if by putting the dumpster enclosure technically on village property, on the village right-of-way, and then having the three perpendicular spots there, I don't know what risk, what maintenance agreements, what conditional requirements there might be for somebody to put up their dumpster enclosure on city property. So Bill, I don't know if there are things we might need to think about there. From a technical perspective, it's not ideal. There's a bit of a sight distance issue with that dumpster enclosure being there, but First Street's not exactly an interstate, so I think it would work. But I wonder if there is an administrative protection for the village with respect to the improvements on the public right-of-way. Fourth bullet point, getting a little more granular here into some of the design details. If those 3 parking spots are on First Street, my question was simply, why not scooch them a little bit farther to the west so they're not hanging quite as far out into First Street as they're shown there. It's a minor issue that the design engineers might consider. One of the other questions I had as I looked at the site plan was directional signage. In the southwest corner, in the south entrance off of 2nd Street, there is what appears to be a menu board, I would assume over the top of the drive there. And I don't know how this site might function if that is something that people would stop and stare at for quite a long time. If that was the case, I don't think you could queue more than 1 or 2 cars there. If they anticipated having a long queue because of that feature, there's a chance, I guess, that you could queue out into 2nd Street. But again, I don't understand enough about how the facility works. If it's just a sign that someone would pass under fairly quickly, perhaps that's not an issue. And then with some of it shows entrance only on that southern exit, southern entrance off of 2nd Street. I would hope there would be some signage showing that so that someone wouldn't try to come down off the first exit and try to get back out onto 2nd Street there. I don't know what signage might assist that to make sure that the flow within the site is good. Another minor design detail here, the handicap space, its location, the aisle, the required aisle next to that spot as it comes up into that container there. That's a little bit tight. Again, we don't have design details of that sidewalk, but if they were to flip that space to the east, that might be a little cleaner and enable them, once they get to the design of the sidewalk there, to enable that ramp so that it meets ADA. I didn't know what type of pavement was proposed here, if it's concrete or asphalt, and how that might match into your streets. Again, with curb and gutter, again, more design detail sort of things, or maybe beyond what the site planning commission might look at, but those would be details that we want to see how that might impact city infrastructure on 1st and 2nd Street with drainage and connections of the pavement. Next to last one, they show the sign kind of sitting in the detention basin up in the northwest corner. Again, without much detail on that basin. I'm not sure how that would work, if it's on a pedestal, or how it would impact the function of the detention basin. I'm sure the intent is not to have a sign in a wet hole, but again, details there. And then finally, there is a fence along the southern border of the property, partial fence. It looks like it does actually extend into the 1st Street right away. And you've got about 6 feet gap between that fence and the existing fence on the southern property. Which I think it looks like it might be on this subject parcel. I like the fence there for screening purposes, but I don't know the details of landscaping and fencing and how that no man's land in between might be maintained. Some of these things are just design type details that I'm sure they'll work out in the future. There weren't anything here, again, that was in direct violation of the limited requirements of the B1 zoning ordinance, but those were my comments for consideration. Again, some of them technical, some of them more administrative. That's all I've got. Thanks, Fred.
We've got someone, Dirk Jennings. Did you want to say something? Go ahead and unmute. You can ask your question.
Yeah, hi, Fred. I had a question about the traffic on 2nd Street, how having a coffee shop at the end is going to impact the traffic on our block here. It's not very wide, and we already have semi-traffic that come up and down this to go to the 2 shops at the end, the welding shop and the new boat shop down there. I don't know how you guys see that. Or I'm just worried with the kids getting on the bus and people wanting coffee in the morning that people are going to be cutting through 2nd Street to get to the coffee shop.
Right. I can answer that for you. The city council has discussed this at their last 2 meetings previously, and the council has voted to make a truck lane that will keep all of the semi-traffic off of our city streets. It will run it down off of 116 down Main Street to Hannah Street, and keep the truck traffic off of Runkle, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Streets. So they are in the process of making that a truck route so that that would alleviate the semis anyway going down the residential streets. The other concern, the other question you had was as far as with the coffee can, how that traffic is going to affect Second Street. There may be some additional traffic. I'm not sure. I think most of your traffic for the proposed project is going to be coming right off of 116 Farmington Road and returning right back onto 116 Farmington Road. I don't know why they would drive down Second Street to get back onto Farmington Road.
If it would happen to become an issue with traffic, like I said, there's a lot of children on this block, and we've had problems in the last 8 years at the bus stop, which is at the south end of our block. You know, people running the stop sign. I know that isn't the coffee shop's problem, but it is a problem. And the less traffic we keep off this, the safer our children it could be, you know.
Sure. Yep, I understand.
If it becomes a problem, is there a plan that we can come up with to, you know, stop that from happening? And one other little thing I wanted to add is, in the mornings down here at Hog Trough, and you try to pull out and people are pulling in, it's a cluster in the morning. And you add the extra traffic at the coffee shop, no one's going to be able to get out going, you know, from Second to 116.
Yeah, there are different traffic things that we can do there, but I think at this time, we don't have any idea what that traffic is going to be like until the project is built. You know, it's hard to tell if that's going to increase any traffic there or not.
Brett, if I might, I don't know, again, what coordination has occurred with IDOT. You know, they would presumably have asked that question as well, what sort of traffic this might be generating. I can't imagine that it would warrant a signal on a highway, but my guess is that IDOT will have asked that question.
All right, anyone else have questions? Tony?
I live on 219 2nd Street. I'm in favor of having a coffee shop, but there are exceptions. As Brandon was talking about his engineering report, I didn't see anything on lighting. This is a residential neighborhood. That's something that needs to be thought of. We all seen the incident that's happened over in Farmington with Lone Veterinarian, with lighting and stuff. As a resident, I don't want light shining in my house when it's dark out, especially come winter when it gets dark earlier. Another thing is a 30-foot tower or 40-foot tower. I'm going to be looking at directly every day I open my window. It's going to be directly out my window. That's not something that I'm opposed to. I mentioned that to Ron a couple times. When I've had a meeting with him, I said, I don't like that. And so another thing, also worried about the traffic volume on 2nd Street. My daughter was one that was almost hit at the bus stop. She's 13 years old, getting ready to be 14. So that's something that we are concerned on 2nd Street. As many of us neighbors have had called the sheriff's department 3 or 4 times about traffic and people running stop signs down there too. So that's something that we need to make sure gets addressed. Brandon, if you're still on there, are these recommendations that you have, are these things that should be done or need to be done on your plan, on the plan?
That's maybe a fair question for Fred and Bill. Your zoning ordinance mandates parking, has a height requirement and setback requirements. And that's it. And then it says that the planning commission is to review this for adequacy of utilities, for the relation of the building height to the surrounding land uses, and what traffic impacts might be. You don't have detailed design standards for this sort of stuff. So these are my recommendations for design standards. So I don't know what teeth you have for some of the detailed technical things that I've mentioned here. However, IDOT does, and that's why I think the details will be in whatever is submitted to them. So my list of things are considerations. It's your permit to issue. So what I'm not able to do is compare it to the design standard that you have, because you don't have one.
Correct. Thank you, Brandon. That's what I need.
So yes, more stuff will be coming on this. This is what was the schematic design that's in front of the board right now is for conditional approval, meeting Brandon's thing. So basic layout, with the zoning board be voting on the basic layout of the site. There was another entrance considered, but IDOT did turn it down. IDOT's already looked at the traffic stuff and said that for the volume of a coffee shop coming in the west side and coming out the east side using the existing village intersections is all that's necessary for the traffic that IDOT would anticipate from this type of project. They didn't see enough traffic to warrant putting another entrance directly from the highway into the coffee shop. The specifics about the size of the basin and everything that Brandon will look at is being worked on. It's just getting this in front of the basic layout in front of the board right now, satisfying, like he said, the few things that are in the zoning ordinance, setbacks, height requirements and stuff like that, which this is just a site plan, this isn't a building plan, are there, but all of Brandon's comments will be addressed. Whether they're in the zoning ordinance or not, they're gonna be addressed.
That's all I have.
Well, and I'm Angie, I'm Tony's wife. And again, we support the coffee shop coming in. I think it's a great idea. As far as the height, the concern that we have is that tower overlooks neighboring properties, residential properties. And so our concern is people looking down onto people's backyards while they're sitting drinking coffee. It's just a privacy thing. It's not, I don't think anybody's going to be weird about it. There's small children in that community that could be playing in that backyard, or you could be sitting out there in your pajamas enjoying breakfast, and you just expect that realm of privacy in your backyard. So that I think is our main concern with the height of the tower, and I understand it meets within the zoning requirements of the city. We just want, as a group and as a neighborhood, we want you guys to know that we really do have a concern about that. And I understand also that we don't know what the traffic patterns are going to be till all this is in place and traffic starts coming in. And I think the way it's set up is okay. I just think our main concern is people coming in from the not necessarily coming in from 116. I think that'll work fine. My concern would be people coming in from, like Glassford area, that type of thing, coming in this way, turning down Hannah, and then coming down 2nd Street to get to the coffee shop, because that bus stop is at Hannah and 2nd. That's where that bus stop is. My daughter was almost killed at that bus stop. That had nothing to do with the coffee shop, nothing. But the added traffic, again, ups that concern, especially for the younger kids who sometimes maybe don't look when they cross the street, or the driver's not looking. There's normally nobody there, so they're going around the corner. I think that's where our concern comes from. Not the traffic coming from 116, but the traffic coming from behind and coming this way to where they're not going to go down. If it were me, I wouldn't go to 116. I would turn on Hannah and come down 2nd Street. That's right where that bus stop is. So that's our big concern. And I don't know if we can, there's a place in Peoria when they're loading the buses at the school, you can't go down that road. I don't know if we can do something like that with Hannah, if we can talk about maybe doing that just for that, maybe 20 minutes for that bus stop. It's just an idea. Just to maybe help alleviate some fears for parents, if that's maybe something we can look at. That's the concern is the traffic from that way, not necessarily people coming in from 116. Thank you.
Anyone else have comments? Anybody on Zoom, anyone else have comments that they'd like to address the board?
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is Danny Pearson.
Okay, Danny, go ahead.
Yeah, the tower that everybody keeps talking about. I actually live right next door to the proposed location for all this. And I have had numerous conversations with Ron. And he actually talked about, because we told him that was our big issue. Whoever's up in that tower is going to be staring right at us in our backyard. And we put up a wood privacy fence for a reason. Well, he made a suggestion that he might block it completely off. So the only way you could look is towards 116. You can't look back into the neighborhood. I'm thinking if you did something like that, you might alleviate some of the people's concerns about having people stare at them in their backyards if he could do something of that nature.
Okay, very good. Someone else had a comment?
Yes, I did. This is Courtney Pestle. I also live on 2nd Street. And one of my other concerns, again, is to mimic what Angie said about the traffic. Not just the traffic in the morning while the kids are getting on the bus. My concern would be, all morning long and through the day. Not all of our children are of school age yet. We do have children, who are home during the day, or children who after school and so forth. The people coming in off of Hannah Street, or trying to avoid 116 coming down 2nd Street to enter from there. I think trying to limit traffic as much as possible for those who do have children. And once the children are out of school, after school, during the summer, I think, yes, the morning bus stop is an issue, but I think just the possible additional traffic that could be happening at all times, a great concern for, I think, a lot of us.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have a comment?
Hey, it's Mindy on 2nd Street. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
All right, perfect. One thing that I would like to have taken into consideration, Tony brought it up, I didn't even think of that, would just be the lighting. I know we obviously have to have lighting to make our businesses stand out. That's a good thing. But if that can be kind of taken into consideration on our side as being residential and being able to kind of sit outside when it's darker and not have big bright lights, that would be great.
All right. Very good. Anyone else have a comment? Anyone else over here? No? Over here?
You'd like me to address quite a few of those, or
That is entirely up to you, Mr. Gully.
I can. I'm Andy. First thing is we're gonna put a light right directly on your deck so you could see, I thought.
I was figuring that's what you were thinking of doing.
The question with the tower, there's nobody in the tower. The tower is for looks. It has windows in it around for lighting to come down through. There's a staircase in there that goes to a 2nd floor. Danny, the part we were talking about was the fence on the 2nd floor patio. There is a patio on top of there in phase 2, possibly phase 1, that we talked about maybe just putting it up so that everybody would look at 116 and not your backyard. Although they're going to still be able to see in the backyard out of the other tower and stuff too. You can't stop that. We can just eliminate from putting as many windows back there as we can. Obviously, that's not going to matter what it looks like from the backside anyway. Traffic going up and down the road. I have suggested, although and don't anybody take this the wrong way, and please, I understand about your child. I really, really do. But the streets are made for cars. And as far as the traffic coming down from Glassford, Hannah City, I suggested maybe putting a sign right there on Hannah Glassford Road with a big arrow pointing straight forward, coffee shop drive-through. Now, I can't stop the cars running the stop signs.
Right,
I can't stop the cars that are running the bus stop signs. The only thing I can do is take a tie rod iron and put it right through their windshield, which I would.
No,
Okay.
I completely understand that. I'm not holding you responsible.
No, and I understand that. But we will do everything we can. And no, we're not gonna have any lights in anybody's backyard, Mindy, I was kidding. Some uplighting on a flag, I think we're gonna put a flag in there. You know, I don't think anybody's gonna make us put any street lights anywhere, are they? That's a question.
I don't know, what, we'll have to check our ordinance on that.
Okay, the lighting we were thinking about is down low, cute lighting out where everybody sits and stuff like that. Some down lighting up where people sit upstairs. By no means do we want to make this place like home. I understand the problem over there. They got a big, huge street light going down this guy's yard. So none of that was ever even going to be in play as long as nobody didn't make us do it. It was just all down lighting and just cute lighting, and you know, as you drive by, you can see it. The detention pond there, Brandon. We're talking about somehow designing that so not only is it a detention pond for IDOT, but also a large fountain that's going to have water coming out as a water feature for everybody to look at, which would be really cool. So I think that, hope that helps everyone, addresses everyone's concerns. We have made the truck route go around. We've got the trucks gone, or will have. Everybody coming in off the 116 through the coffee shop. I can see where they're probably going to come down Glassford. I can see it.
Oh, yeah, me too.
But I would suggest, like I say, well, maybe somebody, the city, somebody, put up a sign on the road that, you know, coffee shop drive through straight ahead. And just, that's about all you can do legally, I think.
Can I ask a question?
This is Mindy Fitch. Go ahead, Mindy.
So I understand, you know, there is no control over the traffic, but is there a way, and I'm just reaching here, for you to design the entrances? You know, all right, so when you go to Starbucks, once you pull in, you can't get out. Now, is there a way that you could maybe reconstruct the design to where when people are coming into the drive-through, that they literally have to come in off of 116 because of how the entrance is, and then just not maybe make the exit the same way, how it curves around, and with a no left turn or no turn onto the side streets, force them to go towards 116 versus giving them an option? Is that something that could be doable?
As you heard, IDOT shut 116 off.
No, I mean, do your entrance and exit off of 2nd Street and 1st Street. But if you put the curbs up to where it you know, you have one entrance in, and they wouldn't be able to turn off of 2nd Street or 1st Street. They would have to come into 116 to make the turn. And then if they're used to seeing that, they're going to know they can't get into the coffee shop from 2nd Street or 1st Street.
I see what you're talking about. I don't even know if that's something that's allowable to do. I think we have to have that apron. That's what you're talking about.
Okay, it was just an idea.
Yeah, I think we have to have that apron.
I got a question for Fred real quick.
Go ahead, Dirk.
Yeah, I don't know, IDOT doesn't control Hannah City roads, right?
They don't control their roads, but they do control 116.
Okay, would it be possible to turn this road into, you know, make it a dead end down at, you know, the last house right at Danny's, or the last house on the block, and not allow traffic to come down, and we can all just use that way to Hannah Street? I mean, is that something that you as the
People on South Second.
president of board and mayor can get done?
Well, the mayor can't do it. The village board can look at different options that are brought to them and decide what is the best for the citizens, especially those that are living on that road. You know, there are options, but until we know what the problems are, it's hard to make a solution until you know what the problems are.
Yes, sir.
You know, There's all
I'm
kinds of
just
things.
trying to be-
You can put up speed bumps and everything else, but that tears up vehicles, and it tears up our equipment when we plow snow, and, you know.
That's where I was coming with the dead end. I'm just trying to be proactive rather than reactive, because it's already a problem with the traffic. The road's not wide enough. There's only one sidewalk,
Right.
and it's not in very good shape anyhow. You know, the infrastructure is not up to par, not what it should be.
Right. And that's, you know, that's one of the reasons why we are looking at this TIF district and looking at these developments to help us with our infrastructure problems that we do have.
Yeah, and I agree. I'm not opposed to any business coming to this town at all. The only thing, like I said, the only thing I worry about is the children on this block, their safety. I mean, because it gets crazy on this block with the traffic. People, and it's like I said, it's nothing against the coffee shop. It's more, this probably should have been addressed or brought to the board 5 years ago. It has just gotten worse and worse and worse. I've lived here for 17 years, and it's doubled.
Sure. All right. Any other comments?
I have a question. Whenever the dead end was brought up,
Mhm.
what was the reasoning behind the shaking?
It was brought up before. I voted against it. Long dead ends aren't favorable for emergency vehicles.
Do you live on the street?
No. And, but I just wouldn't be in support of a dead end there. It's a city street. If it doesn't have a throughway, then, you know, it's only supporting those houses. I mean, it's,
First Street's a dead end.
there's dead ends. You'd have to figure out a way to put a turnaround down
That's
there.
not my job to figure out how to put a turnaround job. My job is to protect my children and the children on our block,
Sure.
and I really don't appreciate the shaking of heads. 'Cause you
Well, I
don't live on
voted
our
no
street.
against it. I mean, when we talked about it before, I was no against it. So I was, I shook my head because I wasn't in favor of it before.
I'm just
I mean,
asking
it's
why.
not an insult to anybody, but if I wasn't in favor of it before, I'm shaking my head.
I think.
I have a question about the turnaround, or about the dead end, excuse me.
All right, Courtney, go ahead.
Yeah, if we have, over half of the residents on Second Street who would be in favor of dead ending the street, what would be the reasoning against it then if you have over half of the residents who would be for dead ending the street?
Well, it's not. It's not to say we won't dead end the street. All we're saying is that we want to look at the options before we make a decision. I mean, I think there's several different options that you can do. Like I said, we can look at options of speed bumps. We can look at options of no parking on the street because it is a narrow street. We can look at options of blocking the street off completely, and residents would then have to use the alleys. There are lots of different options to look at. I don't think one of the options one of the arguments against making it a dead end was the difficulty of emergency personnel to get down there and be able to turn around with their big fire trucks if there was an emergency need down there. That was one of the biggest arguments against making it a one-way or a dead-end street. So it doesn't mean that it can't be done, but there are other options that can be explored also.
And I understand that. I think Dirk said it best when saying, I would rather be proactive than reactive in addressing this situation. And I would agree that the traffic has gotten substantially worse down this street over even the last 2 years. The amount of the traffic that I sit here and watch it's unbelievable, the amount of traffic that has started to come down 2nd Street. I'm not opposed to any business, but when it starts to become a nuisance in the amount of traffic that it creates in the residential areas, I think is when it needs to be concerning.
Right, I understand that. And I think if you look 10 years ago, there weren't that many children on that street 10 years ago. And now there are a lot of children on that street. So, you know, things are always changing. So it is something that the board can look at. Yes. Yes, go ahead.
You look at it, you're tearing down a house, which is residential spot on Second Street. And he mentioned, you know, streets are to be driven on. I understand that, but it's not our fault that IDOT said he couldn't come off of Farmington Road and he had to come in off the Second. So, you know, the reason they want a business on Farmington Road is because it's Farmington Road.
Right, and because that is a business district.
Right, but as you go back and you take out residential buildings to expand the business, you are in fact taking out residential business to do it. So you got to take into consideration what's back there. When your zoning was built, you had a main street, or main avenue, which was Farmington Road, and it was small businesses on there that had frontage on Farmington Road, not a block in, you know. So yeah, he's correct in assuming that roads are roads, but zoning is zoning and should take into consideration that that is a house that was there.
It was zone business. With the house there, it was still zone.
Correct.
All the end caps of the blocks in town have always been zone business.
I understand that,
Yeah.
but the house
was zone business.
the frontage is still there for your business. He's going all the way back to where the house is there. So you're going further back.
Well, that piece of property was the end cap of the block. It's a little deeper than the other lots on either side of it because of some peculiarities with the way that block was originally broken up. But that was the end piece of property. They didn't acquire any more property than the house. So that end piece of property, the house and what was the former gas station property, that's the original depth of those properties. So they were the end cap of the block that was business. Even though a house sat there, all the ends of those blocks, because if you look, there's one other house up there by Country Companies. Otherwise, you have business all the way from Main Street to Hannah City Glassford. And I think the other house is even business too, but all those ends were zone business, and then everything back was zone residential. That end is, you're right, is a little bit deeper because I think like even Tony's house almost sits directly west of it, but it's just because the other end caps weren't as deep of lots as those were. So that was it's just a little bit deeper of a lot, but that was the end of the block. So.
And I think it could work. I mean,
Yeah.
the hot truck has been there for how long?
Yeah, exactly.
And it works.
And FS was there, and there was a gas
I
station
mean,
where this place is going in.
We just want to make sure that you guys understand what our concerns are.
Yeah.
You know, and going forward so that we can work together to figure out
Yeah.
what is the best thing.
And initially, the first step, because there was talks about putting an exclusive 116 directly into that thing. IDOT looked and said, hey, you know, for a coffee shop, the volume of traffic doesn't warrant us putting another permit going out. When you already have streets that flank it on either side, they anticipate as you know, the vast 99% of the traffic is going to be on the highway in the morning.
Right.
Their thoughts, it's going to come into the coffee shop and back out going right, going the other direction. It's going to be right in, right out because, on that south side of the road, if it was on the north side of the road, again, have issues because nobody's ever going to be able to cross traffic and get going back east again, as you know. So.
Yes.
And that side of the road will be the right in and right out and easiest to go through. So I don't think you have many people leaving to go back into town. You could, if they live in town, you're gonna have people in town, I'm sure, coming up and getting coffee, but
I think that's just, we just want you to know that we as a neighborhood have concerns.
Yeah. And dead end in the street, as I said.
Against it. We just want to make sure that our voice is heard.
Yeah.
We don't want this to go forward and then 5 years from now we come up here and we're like, wow.
Yeah.
We want you to know now what our concerns are.
And dead ending streets is just it's not a quick thing to do. It's a road reconstruction because at the end of the road you might have to take a right of way. You got to build a cul-de-sac. You got to build a turnaround for garbage trucks, fire trucks, all the stuff like that. So, anything's possible. It's just not something you can knee-jerk and do because it'll be a pretty major project to shut it off. And then you got to pick where you shut it off at. Those lots on that street are not extremely wide. So you're going to have to pick a spot to come out that you can add a cul-de-sac in and not be on someone's front step, you know, and do that. So if you had that major of a problem that you're like, we're just gonna segregate traffic in town and highway in and out, which still would, I mean, the split would be somewhere probably south of Tony's. He would probably be highway only, then he's not gonna get back into town from his house anymore, you know? There's a lot of stuff that goes on with that. That's something, I mean, there's gonna have to be plans, there'd have to be plans drawn up. I mean, it'd be, you know, and a pretty inexpensive thing for the village to do too.
I don't think that anybody's asking for a quick fix.
Oh,
for
no,
that.
exactly.
I think that
Yeah.
the idea is brought forth.
Yeah,
because it's a
exactly.
solution, a potential solution to the problem.
Yeah.
And I'll bring up, but I think.
Well, potential solution to potential problem.
Right. Well, you can call it a potential problem.
Yeah.
I got mention my next paycheck, traffic's gonna double on Second Street. Because we've watched it.
Yeah.
We've watched it increase.
Yeah.
And with the addition of another business, it's gonna increase. So.
Yeah, the problem
we
with
can talk
sure
about
would be more
potential
cars.
problems versus potential solutions, but
Yeah.
the issue is that I think that Courtney brought up a good point. If over half of the residents on Second Street are interested and are wanting to pursue that option, then who are you to say no?
Well, and I agree, and I don't know that they're all saying no. Like Fred said, they have to consider multiple options, and maybe
Oh,
and the
absolutely.
dead end is one of them. You know, so we just have to follow that process forward and continue to show up at the meeting.
I'd like to,
continue to voice our concerns, and let you guys know what we're feeling, and feel out all those options, and decide as a group in a neighborhood and an organization in a city that supports that, what's the best thing for everybody.
Yeah, and I do appreciate you guys coming, because very seldom do we ever have people come to our meetings. And so it's hard
An
to,
eye-opener for me, and I will be attending the meetings.
good. I hope you do, because we need more people to tell us what their thoughts are about our community and what needs to be done. Dirk,
I just want
go
to say one thing real quick. This block, the Second Street block, doesn't have an alley down it like most other blocks in Hannah City.
Uh-huh.
So that there's that, the parking, a lot of us have to park on the edge of the road. So, I mean, putting a parking ban on the side of the road, that would never work, because where will we park? I mean, I'm just throwing that out there. I know there's no easy solution. I just hope we can come up with a solution. Like I said, let's be proactive instead of reactive.
All right, thank you.
Hey guys, can we stop the site conversation? That it's totally, people, I just know from business calls, when there are side conversations going on, you're like hearing two voices.
And I need to jump in if I could.
Sorry about that.
Okay, Bill, go ahead.
And as you know, I got to jump off this call in a second, but are you taking a vote tonight of the ZBA PC?
Yes.
Okay, so I think you need to be mindful of, as I'm sure you are, that the ZBA PC has the final vote on the site plan, not the council. So if you're going to put conditions on, you got to do it here. And I think the conditions that Brandon mentioned were entirely appropriate. I think you might want to speak to some lighting issues. It sounds like that's, in the current plan, not an issue, but I'd throw it in there. And then there was a direct question of me early on by Brandon as to the dumpster, and you can't lease, a city road to a private owner. It's pretty clearly not allowed. So that one, there may be a place on the lot that could be moved to, or maybe we vacate that part of the street, but I don't think we can throw it in as a development plan type of component where you can use the right of way for that.
All right, thank you, Bill. Mr. Gully, would you like to address First Street and what you have proposed there? I guess I didn't realize that is on First Street, or is that dumpster on your property? I can't tell from your design here.
The building's actually going to set approximately 6 feet back from the property line. And that big fence is not supposed to be there. I don't know why he drew it in there, because he thinks there's gonna be a dumpster. It's just gonna be cans that the dump truck or the garbage truck is gonna come on the street and wheel cans out to the truck. I've already talked to the guy that runs whoever the trash people are around here.
PDC, Gino.
Yeah, he's the second guy out of my
PDC.
driveway.
Oh, we have PDC in the village now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
PDC.
second guy out of my driveway is the one who's
Yeah.
running it for here. And he's already okayed that. All I want to do is put 3. I don't want a big dumpster there. We're just gonna put 3 or 4 wheel out cans like what we have now, and then put them in a small fence there. So that
So they'll fit on-
that will not be there on your
So they'll
property.
fit on the property then. They won't be on right of way.
They won't be on your right.
So that issue's gone.
Okay, so, and what about that parking on the right of way? Is that on your property or is that on the
That
village
is
right of way?
marked on the right of way. That is there is a 20-foot swath that goes through there. That is before you get to the actual blacktop of the street from property line. So he has got parking on there.
So that's between the existing pavement line and the right of way line. There's just a lot of empty right of way right there.
There is. It's
Okay.
It's like the vehicles and the sheds and everything, they're on the same thing in the back.
It'd be similar to almost Gil's setup where there's so much right of way there that you have room to park straight in and not be in traffic still. So it's off the existing pavement, but not on private property, but it's
Okay.
only, so it'd be like Gil's Street setup basically, except just a small section of 3 spots.
So it's like the
Like
Main
Main
Street
Street.
parking.
It'd be like Main Street parking except 3 spots. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Does anyone else have any other questions about the site plan?
I did have one more talk about Second Street,
Go ahead.
which has not been mentioned yet, but what's driving the traffic now?
I don't know. Honestly, I can't answer that question, but we've lived there 10 years and it's probably doubled in the 10 years that we've lived there from when we moved in. I don't know what is driving the increase, to be honest with you. I haven't been able to figure it out.
So basically it has to be population at that point, because there are no
I
other
think
businesses.
so. And it's not just, I mean, it's not people coming down the street to visit people. It's people using the street as a thoroughfare, which it's a road, you know, but I don't, but the hot shop has been there since before we moved in. And so I mean, that could be some of it, I guess, you know, our food's great. So I mean, I eat there all the time. But I honestly don't know what the increase really is.
How about a really cheap fix?
Okay.
What about a one-way?
Well, like I said, that's all in the discussion. Like I said, there are many different ways we can look at this problem, and you know, it may take doing some traffic studies and things like that to see how much traffic is going down that street. Once we get the semi trucks off of those streets, if that makes a difference on the amount of traffic that's going up and down your street. So yeah, there are a lot of different things that we can look at and we will look at. And all options are on the table. I mean, nothing has been removed from the table. It's just some of the things that have been brought up already have created other questions also. And so we don't have the answers yet. And I think it needs more study to really be able to give us a good solution on how to fix the traffic problem that may or may not occur there. We already know from the comments that you guys have made with the school buses and everything that, you know, that needs to be addressed whether the coffee can goes there or not. So that is something that we need to look at also.
I think it's me, Ron, if you want to know the truth. You know, I moved in 10 years ago and now traffic's double. I think it's probably just people come by to see me.
Like a mess.
Yeah.
Never drove that street till
I'm
I
a
knew
people
about that.
magnet, I'm telling you.
All right, does anyone else have any questions or concerns?
Real quick,
Uh-huh.
what Bill was saying, the items that need to be taken care of, if
Mhm.
that's voted on tonight and approved, I mean, then he's able to do whatever he wants to, right? He doesn't have to abide by that site plan, right?
No, it'd be
No, it
conditionally
would be
approved.
conditioned.
Yeah, so if they vote it and conditionally approve it, it's basically saying in general, the layout is fine, but you're not getting any permits until you, that way you wouldn't have to wait for another meeting. Basically, the board just be saying, yeah, we're fine with it as long as you satisfy A through Z or whatever. So yeah.
So, Mr. Chairman, it's up to you whether you want the committee to vote on that. I would recommend that if the committee votes on that they would take into consideration the review or the review of our engineer and make the contingent upon the approval of the site plan.
And then maybe add, Tony brought up lighting. I don't know if Brandon had that on there or not, but
I did not, because again, you don't have an ordinance, and I don't know enough about the function of this facility. Is it something that is open in the evenings where you would want to have site lighting? I would think that as a development, you would want to have safe lighting in your parking lot. But that guy also ties into the signage. You know, you don't have a significant signage ordinance, but you know, whether it be uplighting on signs or pedestals or animation, you know, there are a lot of lighting issues that of course are of interest to me, but I don't have an ordinance to require it. But yeah, I would absolutely, and the last bullet point that I have there, details on fencing, landscaping, and site signage, I would add lighting. I would be curious to know how that looked, but I don't have an ordinance to base it on.
Rick, can I just make a comment? This is Nancy Gates. So if I want to make sure that we're hearing our audience participants, whoever, the public, correctly, and I've jotted down 3 things. It was the lighting concern, it was the privacy concern of the height issue, and then the 3rd one was the traffic. Did that kind of hit the bullet? Yes, I think so.
Yeah, if somebody wants to make a motion, from what our engineer indicated, that the site plan does conform to our ordinance that is on the books, but with the recommendations that he has laid out in his memorandum to include lighting would be a way you could word the and work on that if you want something like that.
Lighting and traffic flow on that.
Okay, is that your motion?
Yeah, I'll make the motion that we approve this based on the recommendation of the Farnsworth Group, and also with the consideration of lighting and traffic flow on those streets, depending on the traffic flow, based on the studies that we do to see what kind of traffic is going to be using those streets, and then what we need to do down the road to eliminate some of the traffic on 2nd and 1st Street that I live on, 1st Street. So to try to keep that the traffic flow at a minimum on those 2 streets, on that block. So I'll make that motion. Need a second? I'll second.
Okay, roll call vote.
Can I interject? Was there any,
Go ahead.
does there need to be included something about the privacy concern?
Privacy.
The tower.
Yeah, relative to the tower.
There's nobody in it. There's occupied.
Right, but if we're setting, if I'm understanding correctly, our role is to identify things that we say this will be approved as long as these things are met. Am I correct or no?
Right.
So I would recommend that there be something in there. I know you say that there isn't any issue, then cool, this won't be a problem. To say that the only view from that 40-foot high and above, in case there's some future levels, would only be looking down on 116. Does that make sense, or am I off?
That's fine.
Okay.
You add that amendment to it.
I'm trying to figure out how to word that, that as a motion. And
All tower views will be pointed north, not 116.
guess I don't, you're looking at, on your site plan, do you have,
That's the thing, it's a site plan, it's not the building plan, so it's not really, this has nothing to do with the building. So that would be more towards issuing a building permit maybe, because the site plan doesn't have really anything to do with the structure of the building.
The
height.
site plan is just the ground.
The site plan is just how the site's laid out, and the
have to
ordinance
approve-
addresses
we'll
the
have to
total
approve
height
the
of the
other one,
building,
won't we?
but
So we can
there's
address it at
no
that time.
building plans in here, nor will they be from, in this one, that's a separate,
We'll have to look at that building plan, won't we?
go ahead, Brandon.
I mean, it does say in the ordinance that the planning commission shall give due consideration to the relation of the building height and mass to surrounding structures. So actually, building height is one of the few things that you're allowed to comment on. And again, all it says is in B1, the maximum height is 54 feet. I realize that there are some usage things here that are of consideration, and I think that you should discuss them. But building height is one of the zoning issues that you're to be talking about here. It conforms to the requirement. There might be some design details that you could put conditional upon it, but I don't know what. Eventually, there'll be a building permit issued. You're exactly right for the building itself, where additional information can be requested and reviewed.
Yeah, Brandon, this is Nancy again. I totally hear what you're saying, because if I understand Brandon, he's saying the outline meets the requirements of what the village says are the rules. And then it's, I don't know if you call it aesthetics or what you call it, then it's down to design, like you said.
Yeah. So I guess the height is mentioned as part of it.
And
for
it meets it.
Yeah, exactly.
Then we're getting on, well, which way can you look?
Which direction is, base, exactly.
I mean, really, that's what, one of the three topics.
Because where the windows will be at, and stuff like that, won't ever show up on this part. So the issue you're talking about won't be addressed on this no matter ever, because that's a separate set of,
Can I ask
We
just
can address it on the
clarification?
next
We
level.
keep getting hung up on the tower and you keep saying there's nobody in the tower.
Yeah.
Where, could you tell me where the second level seating was gonna be? You had said something about a second level patio.
It's an upper deck on top of the can.
Okay, so that may be also, maybe some clarification on the wording, that while it may be the tower that's the consideration,
That would be on, that would be
that
on
maybe
the
we
site plan.
include patio with that.
No, because the site
That would be on the building permit.
Does, does this one show the original thing you were looking at? If not, you don't have a picture of what,
And Fred, I don't know if this is accurate. It's the only thing I have.
okay, can you guys,
I do have, is there a way I can jet it to you up here?
let me, no, but yeah, does, can you guys see that up there on the screen? Is that similar to what you're talking about?
Black
And so the deck would be on the east or north side of that.
This property line goes right. What I'm doing is taking in.
There's a, yeah, it's up on the left there. It's kind of hard to see, but
This is
is that where the deck is going to be? Yeah.
Give him 8 foot.
That's
Give or take the mill And expand his backyard roughly, yeah. Oh, yeah, no, yeah. And that'll be solid, so there wouldn't be any headlights, nothing coming back through.
Where are we at now?
Oh, yes, yeah.
So the tower will be addressed on the next level.
All right. So what we have here is we have a motion to approve the site plan for 224 North 2nd Street with the recommendations of the engineer in his memo to include lighting and traffic flow to be kept to a minimum on 1st and 2nd Street and privacy concerns addressed. So that is the motion that you will be voting on at this time. I've got a motion by Ken, second by Joe.
Roll call? Roll call?
Yes.
Yes, McCoy.
No.
Motion's made, seconded, and carried. Unanimous.
His house is over
Now I need a recommendation
here. 2nd Street to 1st Street right here.
to take this to the city council, right? Oh, we don't have to do that, do we?
No. So we need a motion to approve the minutes of our June 15th meeting.
Okay, motion's been made by Joe.
Do we have a second?
Here.
Every second?
I think Ken seconded.
Okay, that's fine.
And then we need
So.
just the other update for the planning commission is we do have a new building inspector. He started several weeks ago. His name is Wesley Sticklemeyer. And he is working through Mauer and Stutz, just like the last inspector was. And our next meeting is scheduled for Monday, August 16th at 6 o'clock if needed.
Okay. Any correspondence?
Sorry, I
no.
couldn't hear that last,
Okay.
what, next
Need
meeting?
a motion to
The
adjourn?
next meeting is August 17th. Third Monday of every month.
Okay, we have paperwork to sign yet before we leave. And we can adjourn after we sign this finding of fact.
So you need a motion to adjourn?
Sign this first. I don't know if they adjourn, they might get out of here.
I've got the thing for them to sign here.
You got the one?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, motion to adjourn after we sign this paperwork? Okay. Motion made, second. All in favor, aye? Okay.
All right. Thank you all very much for coming.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Come back again.
Will do.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you. Thanks, Brandon.
That's a good one.
On the street.
Yeah, he's like,